Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. And since it's the middle of winter and the weather is not very pleasant to ride outside, I decided to give you a quick review of my indoor setup and most importantly perhaps the Wahoo Kickr Bike.
Left out, I'm in my zone. Yeah, you know I keep you quiet like a sleep mode. You can keep on, but I got it now. I found my crowd now. I might just deep, y'all can catch me when I leave out. If I leave it, then I go. You just think it, but I know. Make it blow as I go. Yeah. If I leave it, then I go. You just think it, but I know. Make it blow as I go.
Because I have a lot of clients coming to me debating which kind of indoor training setup or indoor trainer specifically to get. And my answer to most of them is simple. If you want a solution that is future-proof and hassle-proof almost completely, then this is probably your best bet, because you have a dedicated bike for this purpose and you don't need to do all the mounting necessary to put on your regular road bike to transfer it to an indoor setup, and it takes away a lot of the hassle. It's always available, always here, always ready to go, and it's best really for a time-crunched individual or someone who just likes to deal with things effectively. And a big benefit for me is that, you know, I tend to ride pretty high-end bikes with high-end components, lightweight titanium bolts, aluminum alloys, etc. And these kind of parts don't really like the corrosion associated with sweating all over the bike when riding it indoors, and it's a good way to damage them. We regularly service bikes with blown headsets and corroded parts, even as far as broken handlebars that originate from this reason. A lot of people think that clamping the bike frame into the trainer is the thing that damages it. That is almost never the case, but the corrosion from your sweat when riding it indoors definitely does damage your bike, particularly if it has high-end components on it. So yeah, this bike is a bit of an investment, that's for sure, but if you take it over the long term and how much hassle it saves, and the fact that multiple people in your household can use it, I think it's a winner. And that applies for indoor bikes in general, but even from those, I think the Wahoo bike is the best. So let me just talk you through the features, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and how it can be made better and what changes did I do. So as with any bike, let's start the front. And yeah, it's technically it's a bicycle. It still has two wheels, although it's not on the same places that you would expect. And that's actually a great thing, because if you use a dedicated fan like I have here with the Wahoo Headwind, this is in itself is a product that is worth its weight in gold. Then the added benefit of a bike like this, or well, specifically maybe the Kickr Bike, because other ones are quite bulky in this area, is that here it's pretty much empty, so there's nothing to restrict the airflow coming from below, from the fan onto you, which I really like. Then of course the unique feature of the Kickr Bike, and that only applies to this one, the regular one. Now there's also the cheaper version called the Shift, is the climb feature. Now I did have a climb mounted to a regular trainer setup earlier. I didn't really like it that much because it felt kind of weird, but on this one the bike actually pivots on the middle point, so it's much more realistic, feels much more like actual climbing and descending. Of course it can also simulate descents, so that's pretty neat. Apart from that, the front end of the bike is really widely adjustable, so you can adjust the actual reach of the bars using this slider, and of course you can adjust the stack with this slider. It also uses the stem. That is basically a standard 1/8" ear, 1/8" steerer stem. Yes, so it's pretty common. So if you're for some reason outside of the ranges that you are available naturally, and this is a 90mm stem, you can easily make it shorter or longer. I also use this bike for bike fitting. It's perfectly fine. It's almost like a bike fitting jig for a fraction of the cost, and the added benefit that it's actually an indoor trainer. So it's also great in that regard. And one thing I have found that for very short riders, women below 160 or even below that, the reach itself is a bit too long. So with that in mind, I don't get these clients very often. They're not very common in bikes these days because, yeah, normally bicycles themselves are quite a bit prohibitive in this direction of fitting. So very short people, it's a bit of a stretch. So yeah, ideally, I would like to see it come with a shorter stem, kind of like a 50mm or even a 0, because yeah, this kind of adjustment has a really wide range. So it could be always made longer, and in fact it can be made extremely long, probably to an extent that nobody would use that. But on the short side of the adjustment range, it's not really enough, in my opinion, or in my experience rather. So that's one thing. I didn't change it yet, but I think I will for the future, just to accommodate these riders. And then of course there's the handlebar issue. So the handlebar actually sits on this telescoping kind of fork steerer, and this one is very widely adjustable in itself, but the handlebar that comes with the bike is a 42cm unit, and kind of an it used to be kind of an awkward shape. Now with these newer bikes, they've updated it to the compact handlebar shape, so that's much nicer indeed. But it's still a 42, so yeah, again, from the fitting data that I have, not many clients that go out of here are on 42cm bars. But since I have a complete assembly here with the standard bar, I have one more of my own with a zip 38cm handlebar. This one is pretty standard, and by using these two we can just swap them over real quick, because this is a quick release unit, and then I can see, you know, which is more appropriate. But of course it's again a very standard component, so you can put on basically any handlebar that you want on there. So yeah, it comes with something pretty standard, can be easily upgraded, not the case for other bikes. So that's also a plus and a minus depending on what your needs are. But yeah, the availability of alternatives is great. Another thing I've upgraded is the bar tape. Now, despite the premium placement of this product, they kind of skimped on the bar tape. So this is just some very thin cork style tape. Of course, it's not bad, but particularly in an indoor setting where the position is quite static, you would prefer a bit more cush, which is what I've done. I've actually even double taped the tops for the aforementioned reason, and it's a Silca 3.7mm very plush bar tape on there. So yeah, I've done this little upgrade, makes the bike feel a lot more pleasant to ride, and of course the narrower handlebar is a big plus in itself. The levers are also closely resembling the current group sets, mainly Shimano I would say, and they're really comfortable. So yeah, it's kind of familiar if you ride any road bike available on the market right now. And with the recent Zwift updates, finally now the buttons also make sense. So you can use these for ride-ons, for power-ups, for turning around, all that stuff that was kind of awkward previously because you had to reach out to the keyboard if you have one. And yeah, I see a few riders messaging me on Zwift, and sorry guys, I can't really reply because my keyboard is quite far, so sorry about that. Sometimes I'm slow to respond. So anyway, the buttons now finally make sense, and you can actually use the bike for turning, which is handy in racing. And to be honest, if you're just riding along, it adds a bit of engagement, makes the time pass quicker. What I like to do is just to take the racing line and shorten the course as much as possible. So yeah, finally the buttons have uses, so that's a big plus. However, one thing I do find strange is that even if you put the climb control into unlocked, so the Zwift or any other software controls the inclination, which is fine, but then if you're in workout mode, the bike levels itself, and then previously you were able to actually adjust the incline manually, like in the offline mode, and for some reason they took away that functionality. So yeah, it would be welcome, particularly with certain types of special intervals, although I don't really like to do intervals indoors. So yeah, it is what it is. As for the ride feel and the performance of the bike in general, I myself and basically everyone who bought this kind of bike from me can testify that it's just a lot better than any indoor trainer you would find. The flywheel is heavier, the belt drive is much smoother, there's no noise from the chain, because even if you have a perfectly set up bike, perfectly maintained, the chain will always make a noise no matter how quiet the trainer itself is. And that's particularly true for shifts. Here the shifts are done internally via the resistance, so it's all simulated, so there is no noise whatsoever, basically regardless of what you do. So that's a big plus. And yeah, I think all the neighbors and people living with you or near you will appreciate that. There's also no dust or debris coming off your chain or drivetrain. You don't need to remove it. Basically, it's zero maintenance throughout. So these are all big pluses, of course, to the Kickr bike. I think that these go also a long way to justify the extra cost of the bike. One strange thing that I found that at least here in the workshop, it's a magnet for dust. It kind of generates a bit of static. So after you stop riding, all the dust from the area just sticks to the bike. So I need to wipe it down quite frequently, which is, yeah, it's a bit weird, but it happens. As for the durability, again, I can say from experience of the past few years, we have some clients that are very intense users of this bike. I don't use it as much personally, but as I said, I use it for bike fitting. So we have quite a lot of kilometers on this. No major issues. There were a couple of occasions where some things turned up and Wahoo were very quick to solve them. So some of them was, particularly with the early units, the bolts for the lever clamps were over tightened by quite much, to the point that actually the lever body itself cracked, which resulted to breaking the levers when the rider put some load through them. So that happened once on one occasion, and on another one we had a button in the lever fail, which resulted in a lever change. These were all handled by warranty by Wahoo, so no big deal, these kind of things happen. So yeah, I just wish really that the buttons could be insulated a bit better. The design itself is only really covered by the rubber hood, so inside there's no actual insulation of any kind around the circuit boards or the buttons. So yeah, that's an area, if you're a heavy sweater, that can potentially get damaged by corrosion. So I think that's what happened, but yeah, it's quite rare. So these are, I would say, in no way detrimental, or not something that you should be worried about, particularly due to the fact that they're handled very efficiently by Wahoo. Yeah, as for the other features, I've already talked about climb, the resistance. Of course, it supports all the software, all the modes, everything you would expect from a trainer of this kind, so I'm not really going to talk about those. A standout feature perhaps is race mode, even though it's still in beta. So it supports 10 Hz communication via Wi-Fi, of course. Wi-Fi has been an addition to the version 2 of this trainer, which this particular unit is. And for me, that solved a lot of issues with the ANT+ or the Bluetooth signal being disturbed. So particularly handy if you're racing. With Wi-Fi, it doesn't really happen, particularly if you use 5G. Then it's almost bulletproof because no other device really uses that kind of range. So I recommend using that. 10 Hz is great, race mode is great. So yeah, the performance is really up there on top. And few more annoying niggles. For some reason, it uses a side entry bottle cage as standard, despite the fact that you can easily take out the bottle in any direction. And I'm right-handed, so I like to operate the bottle with my left hand. So I would prefer, if you have to have a one-sided bottle cage, then it should be left for me. But it's a very minor thing, can be easily changed. I just couldn't bother because I can still put the bottle on the table. And in fact, this is the old Kickr desk. The new one does have integrated bottle mounts in it, so that essentially does away with this. Then yeah, the cranks, of course you get adjustable crank lengths, although in this day and age I think the range could be wider, because now we can go from 165 to 175, and you have 172.5, which is pretty common, and 167.5, but I don't really see a point in doing 2.5mm increments. I would rather have 5mm increments and a wider range. So for example, from 150 to 175, perhaps. So if I was the product manager, I would change that again to enable this bike to fit a larger range of people, particularly on the small side. Then yeah, going back to the bike, so the adjustment actually is quite straightforward and quite wide despite these limitations. So as I said, the front end, basically you have a separate reach and stack adjustment here, and the same goes essentially at the rear with the seat post. So here you need to be quite careful to measure out your position from your current bike, because yeah, it's the measurements here are all separated. So on a regular bike you have a seat post that is reclined, and here it's at right angles, so it works out a bit differently. It's best to use a laser guide to precisely adjust your setback and saddle height, of course keeping your crank length in mind. Then if you make big changes in stack, both the front and rear, then of course you have a separate adjustment that lifts up the whole bike relative to the bottom bracket. So if you have a rider that's vastly different in size, you can just use that. And yeah, it can be done with a bit of practice. It takes around, for a full adjustment, if you know the ranges that you're going to get, it takes around 90 seconds to swap between two sizes. So yeah, it's pretty quick, can be easily done. Again, another slight niggle I have is the quick releases. They're not very comfortable to use. I prefer a longer lever that locks in more tightly, and these are relatively cheap external cam quick releases. So this external cam section can sometimes get mangled up and it's not rotated in the correct way, and if you're trying to work around it quickly and just make a secure adjustment, then it's not the best. Maybe we could have something like a ratcheting mechanism that allows you to manually set the torque at a specified range. Something like that would be preferred, I think, particularly if you use this a lot. So the quick releases could be changed potentially, so maybe that's something I will do. But yeah, those are not great. Hello. The next thing I want to mention is the seat post. Now, it uses a standard round seat post clamp. This stock seat post in itself is kind of D shape. And yeah, the thing here is that on one hand, I would like to have the clamp also made in a D shape, like on the front, because this enables you to adjust the height without, messing with the lateral orientation. So it would be more convenient because your saddle doesn't get misaligned. However, this would tie you to a specific seat post of this shape. And in my particular case, that would be a bit of a hindrance because, as you can see, right now I have a kind of a soft gel touristic style saddle on it. And the reason for that is because my girlfriend also uses this bike for riding indoors, and she refuses to wear bib shorts, cycling bib shorts. And with a saddle like this, she can just ride the bike comfortably without those. And on the other hand, this would be a really uncomfortable saddle with bib shorts. So I have my normal saddle on the seat post with my marked extension, so I can just swap them around with the seat post itself. So yeah, this enables me to do that. However, I could just still buy, even if it were a specific type of seat post with this D shape, I would still prefer probably to have the clamp D-shaped as well, so the sideways position is fixed, and then I could have do the same with that. Also, where it is slightly specific, again, like I said, with the normal bike is going to have always some kind of angle in the seat post and the seat tube. This one is vertical, so the clamp of the standard or the Wahoo specific seat post accommodates for that, so it's level basically. And a standard seat post like this one, as you can see, is right at the edge of the adjustment, and you can barely make the seat level with the normal kind of seat post. So yeah, it's kind of these small things, but here I can swap around easily. And as you can see, this saddle that I use for fittings and most of the stuff that's done to this bike is not the standard one as well. It's a Fabric Line S short nose saddle that is very popular with my clients, and yeah, I have been using it myself for a really long time. It's just a good design, and the standard saddle that comes with the bike is this one. And it's not offensively bad by any means, but I have used it for precisely 0 minutes because it's kind of an old school shape, no pressure relief, no cutout, narrow at the back, narrow in the front, long saddle, although quite densely padded. So yeah, it's really basic, and it's not really in line with the current trends and what people find comfortable. So yeah, mainly the lack of pressure relief in the front is an issue. So again, this can be fixed very cheaply, but given the price of the bike, I would expect to see something a bit more up to date. Now it's good that they've updated the handlebars because the old ones weren't too great, but this one is better, so they could do the same thing with the saddle probably. So yeah, that's more or less the technical bit. Again, it's, well, of course, considering the fact that it's an indoor bike, it's great to ride. It is, however, on the very stiff side. It doesn't really move side to side, so yeah, it's a bit different in that regard. Some people might find it bothering, some not, although I expect that Wahoo will probably build in some give in the base itself for future editions. It could just probably pivot around the main main pivot right here, also laterally. Yeah, but that's something for the future. I think that makes it actually even more organic and realistic to ride. But yeah, this one is perfectly fine as well. It also has adjustable feet, so you can level it. Of course, that's kind of basic. It has the wheels on the rear, which I've already mentioned, so you can just haul it around without needing to lift it. It's quite heavy, of course, it's 50 kilos. It also means that because of the wide footprint, you would never have a problem with stability during a sprint. Also handy for racing, apart from race mode. So yeah, in general, I would summarize it that it's a really high performance unit. The electronics, all the ride related stuff are great. I would just need some of these contact point refinements to make it really perfect and really stand out in that regard. So yeah, this is basically, I think, all you need to know about the Kickr bike, maybe even a bit more, because you will not probably use it for bike fitting and the purposes that I use it for. But yeah, there you have it. I hope you have found it informational and useful. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.